Good evening, everybody. My name is Scott Jacobs, and you're listening to Juiced Sports Radio. Alongside my partner in crime, Mike Kay, talking NBA Lockout, and what an unfortunate day it is to be a basketball fan. Basically, today, the players announced that they would probably be decertifying from the union, thus leaving the 2011-2012 NBA season not only in doubt, but probably not a chance of it happening at this point. Mike, we begin with the blame game. Who do you blame, the players or the owners?
I don't blame either one of them. I blame David Stern. I think that he has taken his position as commissioner of the NBA from being the greatest commissioner in all of sports to easily the worst. I think that he has put the players in positions of power that they shouldn't be, with the numerous, checks and tons of money and advertisements that they get, and it has given them literally all the leverage. And really has done very little for the owners. I mean, the owners are the ones suffering the most here because a good quarter of them are losing money in professional sports. Even in a recession, I just can't believe that you can say that out loud.
There's a few things that immediately stick out about Stern. A lot of people believe that during the core of the 80s and when the Jordan days, that the NBA expanded too quickly, added too many teams, and the talent pool was deprived, number one. Number two, an interesting thing about Stern that I didn't realize is this will be the fourth lockout that he has presided over. The 95, there was a brief lockout, 96, 99, obviously 204 days long. They played a 50-game season, but no one truly took that season seriously. And then you have this year, where we could be looking at, and probably are looking at, the first lost NBA season in history. So that being said, you have the NHL, which lost their season. It's hard to say. I mean, they have regained popularity, but they've pretty much fallen off the map in terms of mainstream. Is this the type of thing, the NBA losing an entire season potentially, that could just cause problems for years?
I don't think so. I think that after the playoffs that they just had, I believe they were the highest-rated playoffs the NBA has ever had, which is part of the issue. But we'll get back to that later, I'm sure. I think there's the itch that everybody wants to see Wade, Bosh, and LeBron either deliver on their promise or completely fail about delivering multiple championships to Miami. I think people are excited about the potential of Dwight Howard and Chris Paul eventually moving on to other franchises. I think that there's still general interest. I don't know if it's from the key demographic that they want it to be, and I think that this lockout hurts more of the long-time fans as opposed to the young fans that are catching on within like the last 4 or 5 years.
Some logic to that, without a doubt. And yeah, as you mentioned, the NBA is coming off an incredible 2010-2011 season. Obviously, LeBron mania, the hype that went along with that. But again, the focus of that season was a handful of teams, and everybody else was pretty much forgotten unless they played the Heat. When is the next game going to be played? If there won't be a season this year, which is what I'd wager on right now, given that we're now going to be in litigation, which could take months, some have projected years. I don't see that happening. What do you think?
I think you can vouch for me and to all of our listeners and readers. I've been saying this forever, since before the playoffs even ended, that there wasn't going to be a season played this year. I've been pessimistic the entire time, but I do think that Halloween 2012 will be when the first game is played. I think that there will be a season next year. I think they'll be able to salvage this thing probably by May, which is when the middle of the playoffs would be this year, and that's when they'll have the NBA. They'll be able to reach an agreement and then have the NBA season for next season, a full one.
Now it's a $4 billion pie that we're talking about compared to $8 to $9 billion for the NFL. The players were getting a 57% share of the BRI. The owners were getting 43%. The players don't want to give up that number. They've been offering 52, and the owners are like, no, we'll do 50-50. So you have that divide over roughly 2% along with some system issues. And the question, according to Forbes.com, 17 teams had negative operating incomes for 2009 and 2010 season. And what was interesting is that the Miami Heat would actually be, they said, borderline profitable if there was a season under the current CBA. Basically meaning that the most popular team right now in the league, except maybe the Lakers and maybe the Knicks, would barely turn a profit under the current CBA. So clearly the system is a mess, and clearly the situation is a bigger mess. So how do you fix it?
I think they need to have revenue sharing. I mean, I think a lot of people have talked about that over the last decade. I think there needs to be revenue sharing. There's no reason why teams should lose as much money as much as Milwaukee and New Orleans, losing. I mean, they're losing significant amounts of money. Charlotte Bobcats have not done well for the league. You've got to have revenue sharing because while we talk about the playoffs being so awesome, it's mostly because people wanted to watch the Heat. Now, with the Heat, if they're bringing in all that money, that's great for Mickey Aronson and all them. But when they're going to the negotiating table and they want players to take a pay cut, the Heat's the team that's screwing everybody else because, the Milwaukee Bucks don't get those ratings. They're not making money off of them. They don't get people to come to the stadium like the Heat do every game. I mean, that's not fair to them. So why should these owners have to pay the same amount of money or lose the amount of money that they do because one team is extremely popular or three teams are extremely popular and they don't want to share a piece of the pie? When overall the league is hurting because of teams like the Heat where they gain all this popularity but don't share any of the money or proceeds that they make.
Now, LeBron James, one of the players on the aforementioned Heat, actually suggested that contracting some teams, making it a little more like the 1980s when we had 20-something teams, might be the solution. Contracting teams, is that a solution?
I do think it's a solution. I do also say, and I'm not a LeBron hater. I've been very critical of him, but I mean, if you want to joke around, it seems like LeBron wants any way he possibly can to get a bunch of other players on his team so he doesn't have to win the championship by himself. But I guess, retracting I think would be smart. I think the league only needs about 28 to 26 teams. 26 to 28 teams. I think you could do away with Milwaukee. It's unfortunate they're a historic franchise, but you could do away with them. Do away with New Orleans. You could do away with Charlotte. And then you could also do away with Memphis. So there you go. You get two teams out of the West that are gone and two teams out of the East.
Interesting you bring up Memphis because Memphis finally seemed to fall in love with their team this past playoff run as the Grizzlies made a unexpected run as an 8 seed over the Spurs and then into their very entertaining series against the Thunder. I wanted to touch on the point you were making. You mentioned a handful of teams. 5 of the 17 teams that had negative operating incomes for the 2009-2010 season. The Pacers, Bobcats, Nuggets, Magic, which I was surprised to see them on this list, and the Nets will lose less money by not playing games this year under the current CBA than if they had played games. Now, obviously, the current CBA is a moot point because they're not going to renew that, obviously, so it will be different. But when you think about that, the Magic, with Dwight Howard, would still have lost more money had they played this season under the current CBA. Kind of a staggering number when you think about it.
Yeah, I mean, I've said for a while, I actually think a year off would actually help the NBA. I think that teams could recoup their money that were losing it. I think that the players, they could use the rest. And I honestly think that, like, the NBA itself, the level of play, and I don't mean the talent level, but I mean the actual game of basketball has diminished, with this current NBA. I mean, it's not the NBA of the 90s. It's definitely not the NBA of the 80s. There's no technicians anymore. There's no real role players. I mean, it's just, I think it would help the league because maybe they can get in some fresh faces. They can come back. And I think these players are going to go to other countries and they're going to learn how to actually play basketball as opposed to run up the court, dribble, and dunk.
Now, it's my belief, and I felt this way all along, that if the NBA players didn't have other alternatives, there would be more urgency to get this deal done. Now, I know they want to make a stand, and, it's all about principle and all about making money, although we're talking about millions and millions of dollars and billions of dollars here. But if the NBA players didn't have the option of going to Europe and some of these other places, and I know that's not as glamorous as playing in the NBA, but it's still a job, do you think there would be more of a chance that this deal would have gotten done by now, or does it not matter?
I don't think it really matters. I think the players feel like they deserve this money because of obviously the playoff ratings and the TV ratings, and I think the owners aren't going to budge because they're sick of losing money. There's no point in owning a business if you're going to lose money. That makes literally no sense. So I think they're at a standstill either way. I don't think Billy Hunter's a very good player rep. I don't think that Derek Fisher actually knew what he was getting into when he did this. Derek Fisher's a brilliant guy, but I mean, worse in the NBA than it is the NFL, because in the NFL, yeah, you've got like maybe 5% making the major money, but in the NBA, they make so much money anyway, there really doesn't need to be a 5%.
$5 million. Yeah.
Right. The average salary in the NFL is probably, take Peyton Manning and Tom Brady's salary out of there, and I would guarantee you it'd probably be about $1 million at most.
And it doesn't even matter because of lack of guaranteed contracts. You know, so many guys are bit players that are year-to-year guys.
Which is what's so crazy and such a joke about the NBA with Stern. Stern should have learned, after Jordan left, non-guaranteed contracts are the way to go. You keep your owners happy. You know, the players are going to make the money. They have a less likely injury rate than football. It's actually kind of ridiculous, the fact that the NFL players have non-guaranteed contracts when the average career length is about 3 years. And in the NBA, the average career length is probably about 7 years. And
but the players
have no
willing
shot
to
at
concede that. The players are not going to give them that unless it goes to dire straits where these players are banking on this money for their survival, and so far it hasn't come to that yet.
You know, let's say this. What if they compromised and the owners gave them 60%, but they had non-guaranteed for the most part, you'd have half guaranteed contracts. I mean, I just think there has to be a point where the owners can secure their financial state over the players. Because honestly, I know from a fan's perspective it's hard to hear, but the owners are significantly more important than the players are. You want to keep your owner happy so that they stay in the same city. You want to keep your owner happy so that they can maybe produce new arenas. You want to keep your owner happy so that he can pay for more players. The owners are the most significant. In the NBA, they are the most significant thing. And I feel like David Stern and the players have really, overlooked that. They need to watch out for their owners, because if not, they're going to lose all these franchises, or the product's going to significantly deteriorate.